And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of Cowboy State Politics Live from very high above all the puerile and vapid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. Well, I have returned from Sin City, and let me tell you, my wife never has to worry about me being addicted to gambling. Gambling apparently is not my thing. Oh, we had a good time in Las Vegas. I'd never been there before. Seeing the sights, visiting some of the attractions. We went to this great exposition, I guess you would call it, at the Luxor. It was all about King Tut's tomb. It was pretty cool. But in my absence, it would appear that the redcoats have taken full advantage, thinking that, of course, I was not paying attention and that I would be utterly consumed by everything that was happening in Las Vegas. Not so, my friends. Nothing escapes the watchful eye of yours truly. And I have to tell you, there were some amazing things that happened in the House of Representatives in my absence. Alyssa Campbell seems to think that it's perfectly acceptable whatsoever to talk about all sorts of gun control on the floor of the House of Representatives. Yeah, that was fascinating. There was a great discussion by Landon Brown. By the way, it's been something like 1,300 days since Landon Brown agreed to. I don't even know if that's actually the number. I'm going to have to look that up when we get further into the program. But he was one of the original people that agreed to an interview on Cowboy State Politics and then didn't show up. Rightfully so. Perhaps he's smarter than we all give him credit for. But anyway, Landon Brown had a lot of stuff to say on the floor of the House of Representatives. And Representative J.D. Williams, of which I have an endearing nickname for him, but I'm not going to say it on the radio program. But anyway, he thinks that we ought to continue to have an appointed attorney general. There's a lot of problems with that we'll cover. And, of course, the inauguration. Who could, I don't know of anybody in their right mind that missed that thing. And the amazing thing about it is the news media seems to have gone back to their old tricks, thinking that everything is business as usual. Orange man bad, he's back in the White House, and so they can go back to their old tricks. And the American public, the consumers of the mainstream media, will just go right along with it. Not the case. There's a couple of great pieces that I want to talk about. An opinion piece by Jonah Goldberg that appeared in the Pravda on the Platte. We'll get to that here in just a second. But there's a lot of stuff that's been happening. And it seems like anytime that I'm away from this microphone, that it just looks like the political events pile up. And in reality, I was only gone Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, so only 3 days. But in those 3 days, there was a number of important bills that went through the House of Representatives, some of which are on third reading today. I can't wait to get to those. But anyway, lots to talk about on this morning's program. I'm glad to be back. And for the foreseeable future, barring any great snowstorm or something, we'll continue with Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. in the morning. If you want to be part of the program this morning, the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 if you want to be part of the broadcast. But we begin in the Pravda on the Platte. And, we don't get to go here very often because I was told not that long ago that they're hemorrhaging money, that they can't pay for reporters, and they're just not going to pay for anybody to be down in Cheyenne. So we begin in the Pravda on the Platte. In an opinion piece by Jonah Goldberg entitled, "Trump is President Again. Did you feel the vibe shift?" Now, Jonah Goldberg is a never-Trumper. He has been from the very beginning. He's part of the, National Review crowd, the people that claim to be conservatives and claim to have built conservatism, that when Trump got elected, they switched over to the left coast, and they have never left. And I quote, "As the second Trump administration dawns, or for his opponents descends, on America, an interesting and unusual discussion has emerged over the broader meaning of Trump's victory. One thing that makes it unusual is more consensus than disagreement about the vibe shift in American politics." And my friends, I don't know if you noticed this, but right after the election, just about everywhere I went in Sheridan, people were happier, and even folks that I know are definitely not Trump fans and, they may very well just be closeted Democrats. You could tell that they were a lot happier, that there was a lightness in the air, that Biden was gone and we don't have to deal with him anymore. And that's the feeling that I got. And I think that's, you could look at most of the news media. Some of them have gone back to their old tricks, like Jim Acosta, and they're never going to change. They're going to continue hammering on President Trump, and they're just never going to stop. Let me give you a great example. I think this was from a press conference that was held yesterday, and they were talking about all of Trump's pardons. Now, just listen to the attitude of the reporter that asked the question. Here's Donald Trump yesterday.
The people that you pardoned, though, assaulted officers. So I want to ask you about the Vice President, J.D. Vance. He said, this is a week ago, he said, if you committed violence on January 6th, obviously you should not be pardoned. Why is your Vice President wrong?
Well, only for one reason. They've served years in jail.
Listen.
They should not have served, and they've served years in jail, and murderers don't even go to jail in this country. And we had 1,500. We have 16 under review. As you know, we commuted about 16 of them because it looks like they could have done things that were not acceptable for a full pardon. But these people have served years of jail, and their lives have been ruined. And in many cases, listen to me for a second. Stop interrupting.
So hold on just a second. You notice where he had to tell him, hey, stop interrupting. And a lot of these folks, they don't realize that they're standing in front of the president of the United States, and none of them had any respect for him the first time he was in office. Jim Acosta was probably the worst one, continually interrupting Donald Trump and not letting him finish a sentence. And I mean, they just weren't acting as like reporters, rather as opinion writers who had to get their sound bites in. That was before. Now, Trump's response is pretty much what you would expect. Let's finish it out here.
Years in jail. And if you look at the American public is tired of it. Take a look at the election. Just look at the numbers on the election. We won this election in a landslide because the American public is tired of people like you that are just one-sided, horrible people in terms of crime. You don't talk about all the people that have been killed and what happens to those murderers.
Yeah, so Trump's exactly right that the American public is absolutely sick of political pundits. Notice I didn't say journalists, political pundits that they just have an agenda and they don't want to report the facts. And the only thing that they're going to tell the American public is Orange Man bad, Trump is terrible, he's going to destroy the country, he hates democracy. Oh, and by the way, he's Hitler. And none of them have any realization that that utterly backfired in the last election. The more that the news media piled onto Donald Trump, the more that the American electorate rejected that. Now, let's go down to the middle of Jonah Goldberg's piece. Now, listen to this, quote, I don't fundamentally object to any of the partial explanations as to why Republicans won. And those explanations were from Ezra Klein. Now, Ezra Klein is not a conservative. He's just another political pundit, but he writes a lot of columns. So he said that there's 4 reasons why all of this happened. One, that the right has the upper hand on social media. I don't know if that's the case, but I do know that Americans in general, and the majority of them, rejected the narrative that was coming out of the left. Most of them are tired of the LGBTQZXPWD agenda. Most of them don't want to listen to Trump derangement syndrome, and they realized that the American media was lying to them, that Trump was not Hitler. Trump does not want to destroy our country, and it's just a different point of view. Ezra Klein's second point here is that corporations are looking for an opportunity to swing back to the middle after lurching left. It's because of the people who were in office that corporations had to lurch to the left, because they saw ever increasingly leftist policies coming out of the Biden administration, and if they wanted to continue doing business, they had to go along with it. ESG, all of this woke crap. Well, one of the reasons why you're seeing Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg go to the middle, or further to the middle than they were, is they can see the writing on the wall that Trump is in office for the next 4 years, and they can see very clearly, but he's made no bones about what's going to happen during the next 4 years. They have to continue doing business. So it's not that all of these tech titans and huge businessmen have had a change of heart. I don't think that's the case at all. Rather, they're business people, and they realize it's better for their business to at least appear that they're further to the right. Number 3, Trump benefits from a pro-backlash against allegedly feminized culture. I don't believe this for a second. This is the narrative that's been pushed throughout the election, that one of the reasons or after the election, I should say, that one of the reasons that Trump won is misogyny. I think it's all bullcrap. I think most people vote with their pocketbooks, and Biden was terrible for it. And number 4 from Ezra Klein, Biden allowed Trump to stay at the center of attention during his own presidency. That is absolutely true. So let's go back to what Jonah Goldberg was saying. Quote, I don't fundamentally object to any of these partial explanations, but they don't fully capture what's happening or why progressives are willing to agree that something more fundamental has changed. For instance, another important factor is that MAGA is part of a larger global phenomenon. That is undeniable. Populism and nationalism have been on the rise in Europe, Latin America, and India. History is often punctuated by such moments. For example, student protest movements erupted around the world in the 1960s. Nobody has really forgotten Kent State. The trends that have shaped American politics, the global financial crisis, mass immigration, COVID-19, inflation, were not contained within our borders. But I think the most important driver of this vibe shift is that Trump and Trumpism have shattered a near metaphysical consensus about politics on the right and the left. Pre-Trump American conservatism was dedicated to a few fundamental propositions: limited government, cultural traditionalism, anti-abortion politics, fiscal recessitude, and free market economics. The right often fell short of these ideas, but showing rhetorical fealty to the ideals was the binding fundament of conservatism. These commitments will still get some lip service, but on all of these fronts, loyalty to Trump is a more pressing litmus test. This is where Jonah Goldberg is going wrong. It's not Trump. It's not fealty to him. It's that the American public is tired of all of this woke garbage. They realize that it hurts their pocketbooks, that it's hurting family values, that it increases the likelihood that if you're praying outside of an abortion clinic, you're going to be arrested. By the way, I've got another story about that in the stack of stuff. Maybe we'll get to it a little bit later on in the program. But the American public is generally tired of liberalism in general. And it's not just Trump. It's not all of this nationalism crap, but the media just needs to admit it. And this is another great piece from Politico that it's time to admit it. Trump is from Politico. Listen to the headline. Time to admit it. Trump is a great president. He's still trying to be a good one. Okay, so Politico has to get their dig in on him. But this is a fascinating one coming from a very left-leaning source. And I quote, Donald J. Trump is in his second inaugural address, was everything his supporters hoped he would be. Breathtakingly expansive about his intention to reshape the vast federal government around his vision. Raucously jingoistic. That word, that's something that journalists use. I don't even know what it really means. In proclaiming that the country will do whatever it wants to advance its interests around the world. Openly triumphal in asserting his belief that his survival from an assassin's bullet and his victory shows that he is God's chosen instrument to lead the American revival. Trump was also everything his adversaries feared, messianic in tone, lovingly protective of his grievances, wholly uncharitable to the people sitting just feet from him under the Capitol Rotunda, who he defeated so convincingly. In one light, it was all too familiar, but the second occasion of Trump taking the oath of office also put him in an entirely new light. For the first time, he is holding power under circumstances in which reasonable people cannot deny a basic fact. He is the greatest American figure of his era. Period. End of sentence. Trump is a phenomenon that the history books are not going to forget. And for right now, he is the American political phenomenon. Now, just in everything, and like I always ask you, consider the source. It is Politico that is saying this. It's not some right-leaning wacko, publication that all the left says, well, that's just right-wing rhetoric. It's not Breitbart. It's not The Blaze. It's not any of those what you would consider more conservative outlets. This is Politico. So fascinating and absolutely encapsulates everything that is the second Donald Trump presidency. Now all we have to do is do what he asked us to do, be participatory in our own government, and that, my friends, is where we're going to go next. There's a lot of things that happened in the Wyoming Capitol in my absence, but like I said, like I told you before I left, nothing escapes my watchful eye. So we're going to go to Alyssa Campbell and her gun control coming up next. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, information, and entertainment than right here on the Independence Network. Now, we're making a few changes, moving a couple things around, out with the old and in with the new, and that whole spiel. Of course, you could listen to my program, The Ramble Room with Ken Pendergraft, Locked and Loaded with the good Representative Tony Locke from Casper. There's a whole bunch more coming on the Independence Network. Also, don't forget to check out the articles section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics, live on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, on the Independence Network. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. Well, I pretty much am. Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone, back in the saddle, back from Sin City, and I couldn't be happier to be here. Well, there was a lot that happened in the Wyoming Capitol while I was gone, and one of which was the debate over the gun-free school zones bill. And I have to tell you, my friends, it was fascinating to watch on YouTube, and it's amazing how the partisanship, how the utter disdain for conservatism creeps in when nobody is watching. Now, I'm not trying to tell you that Alyssa Campbell thinks that just because there wasn't anybody there that she could say whatever she wants. I don't think that she really cares. But it was very clear that Alyssa Campbell is very much the leftist that all of us thought she was. For example, during the debate on the gun-free school zones bill, House Bill 172, she said this. Take a listen.
Representative Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Please proceed.
I move Committee of the Whole Amendment 1. Oh, no, second reading. Amendment number 1 to House Bill 172. Please.
Proceed.
Thank you. After line 4, we would simply insert small letter J, H-I-J, yes, which would read, any early childhood education center located on the campus of any post-secondary education institution shall be a gun-free zone. So it would be exempt from this bill.
So
And I'm
Alyssa
happy to
Campbell.
take any
Oh,
questions.
stop. I've had enough of that. Alyssa Campbell is taking a gun-free school zone bill and trying to completely turn it up on its head. Now, she doesn't realize that's what she's doing, but her little subsection J would be to create a gun-free school zone in post-secondary educational institutions. So in a bill that its whole intent is to allow you to carry your firearm into the Wyoming Capitol, Alyssa Campbell is trying to create a gun-free school zone. And she specifically, in that soundbite, she was referring to the University of Wyoming. And Jeremy Harrelson's response to it was actually pretty great. Let's see. Let's go ahead and listen to that. Do I have it? Yes, I do. Take a listen to what Jeremy Harrelson, the sponsor of House Bill 172, had to say about that.
And so if you were to turn around and you were to pass this bill with this amendment, you've opened up our university over the hill, but you've excluded one little place, the place with all of our children. I don't know about you guys, but if there was a person that was mentally to the point where they wanted to make a splash, that's a splash. If there was ever a place we should protect even more, it would be that place. And so I believe,
that's exactly right. If there's ever a place to protect, from a would-be gunman, from a lone shooter, which we haven't had very many of those in Wyoming. I mean, we've had a few of them, but nothing like in bigger cities. But if there was ever a place to protect, it is an elementary school. If you hang a sign outside that says gun-free school zone, that's not going to prevent criminals from walking in there with a gun. Rather, it's a big sign that just should be rewritten to say fish in a barrel, shoot at will. But here's the other thing about Alyssa Campbell. If you listen to her on the floor, she's very, 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 tries to be very cute, very patronizing. There's a couple of sound bites that I've got prepared for you where you'll hear that come through. But if you look at Alyssa Campbell's Facebook page, it paints a very, very, very different story. Let me just read you a post from yesterday. 7:33 a.m., she says, and I quote, truly frightening legislation out there that will negatively impact our daily lives. If you haven't been engaged in local politics, it's time to pay attention and reach out to your legislators. There was one from January 9th, right before the the legislative session. And she's talking about House Bill 100, which is a totally different subject. That's the one that allows school districts to hire people that don't necessarily have teaching certificates. I think it's a great bill. I see no reason why an expert carpenter can't teach wood shop if they're good with kids. But if you read her post, here's just one section of it. Quote, "To be blunt, this bill is solipsistic and dangerous. House Bill 100 proposes and seeks to eliminate the credentialing of our educators, teachers, and administrators in this state, stating that, quote, as an act relating to education allowing, okay. But if you read the post, let's see here. First and foremost, it must be said, this is an outright attack on the integrity and professionalism of teachers and administrators. The elimination of credentialing is a value statement that says that being an educator is not a profession. Okay, that's not what the bill says in any way, shape, or form, not at all. But it is Alyssa Campbell acting as a straight up partisan, and I don't see any reason why we should view her in any way other than that, in any other different way. But just listen to this next soundbite. Let's go back to the gun-free zones. And here's the second soundbite I have from Alyssa Campbell. Listen to it.
That's it.
Okay.
Please proceed.
I just didn't want to be rude. Thank you. So a couple of, I guess, points of clarification to questions that were brought, I think by the bringer of the bill. I would agree, yes, Article 1, Section whatever number it is. I'm horrible because I should know this. Constitutionally does give us the right to carry. So I have the right to carry and self-defense. It does not say that everyone else has given me their permission to defend my child or my grandchild. So yes, I think it is important that we recognize individuals' rights to defend themselves, but that does not give them the right to decide for other parents and grandparents and faculty and students that they have been appointed to defend all of those children as well.
Okay, first of all, it's completely nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The Second Amendment has nothing to do at all with anything that Alyssa Campbell is saying. It is an individual right, and the Second Amendment doesn't say anything like except for schools, except for public play. It doesn't say anything like that. The Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. It means what it says, and it says what it means, regardless of what that moron Alyssa Campbell has to say. But the second thing I wanted you to notice is the patronizing tone that Alyssa Campbell has on the floor. In an attempt to be cute, and apparently this is her thinking that if she's cute on the floor, that it'll bring more people to her side. And really what it is just, it is a sophomoric attempt to try to gain support, which didn't have any success whatsoever on the floor. But the point here is that the Second Amendment is an individual right. It doesn't say anything about anybody else. It is your right to protect yourself and your family. And if there's any other innocent person there, you can protect them too. But for Alyssa Campbell to say, well, it doesn't say anything about protecting other people. First of all, I don't think that Alyssa Campbell understands the Wyoming Constitution, and I think it's pretty clear that she doesn't understand the Second Amendment at all. Here is soundbite number 3. Take a listen to this.
I also stand firmly in favor of and in support of the Second Amendment with the bringer of this bill. You might say, well, how is that possible?
It's not.
How can you do both?
Oh, you can't.
So imagine, hypothetically.
Oh, yeah. So this is what these redcoats say all the time. I am completely in support of the Second Amendment. I love my guns. I probably have a couple shotguns back in the closet, but I think that we should have more gun control. I don't think that you should be able to carry your firearm anywhere that you see fit. And I think that you should just defer to us elitists in the school, and we should just... you shouldn't just have you shouldn't be able to have the Second Amendment at all. This is the type of arrogance that liberals, they always use in trying to defeat the Second Amendment. That's what they always use every single time. It is the arrogance and elitism that comes through, trying to dictate to everybody in that House of Representatives, most of the people who have actually read the Constitution, unlike Alyssa Campbell. But that that you don't have a right to protect yourself, that you don't have a right to protect your children, and that we should stupidly create zones where guns aren't allowed. I mean, it is just absolutely incredible. But, that's what you get from liberals, my friends. You shouldn't expect anything more from them. They've been taught their entire lives that the Second Amendment is an option, not a mandatory. We'll have more when we come back. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Cowboy State Politics is sponsored by FreedomGoldUSA.com. They are the working man's gold company. The economy is in turmoil. The stock market pretty much is out of control, and you never know what's going to happen with your finances or your income. One way that you can shore up everything is by investing in gold and silver. Go to freedomgoldusa.com/David for a free interview to discuss your options and find out if gold or silver is right for you. One more time, that's freedomgoldusa.com/David. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. David Iverson, I'm your illustrious host, documented to be almost always right 98.97% of the time. That's a record that the mainstream media just shouldn't even attempt to eclipse because they couldn't possibly come anywhere closer to it. But anyway, welcome back to the program, my friends. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number in the studio, in the mobile studio down here in the Middle Swamp, is 307-374-8989. If there's something on your mind, go ahead and give me a call, 307-374-8989. Before the break, we were talking about Alyssa Campbell and her attempts to turn the House Bill 172, the repeal of gun-free zones, into a gun control bill to ensconce in Wyoming statutes that we actually do have gun-free zones. It was an attempt that wasn't going anywhere, but I think that it reveals exactly where Alyssa Campbell is at. And the elitism in this next soundbite shines through. And, like I said before the break, there are a number of people on the House floor they're elitists. They've been elitists in their professional career, and they really do think that they know better. Last week, before I left to go to Las Vegas, I spent a great deal of time on the podcast talking about, actually it was earlier this week, it wasn't last week, talking about Representative Jarvis's attempts to manipulate legislation, how she made every attempt to say her survey. Now, and if you listen to the way that she put it, well, my survey says I should vote this way, and I'm a true representative of the people. Poppycock. But the elitism in these elected representatives shines through. Now, take a listen to this one. This one's an interesting exchange between Alyssa Campbell and Representative Rachel Rodriguez-Williams. Take a listen to this.
Point of order. Get in there.
What's
Thank
your
you.
point?
The point
Mr.
is,
Speaker, we are on the amendment.
we are on the
We're
amendment.
not, Mr. Chairman, pardon me. I don't believe that crosstalk is permitted. You granted.
Exactly right. Now, this has happened a couple of times on the floor. And, the first time it happened, I chalked it up to just not knowing Robert's Rules of Order, never having been involved in any sort of deliberative body whatsoever. But then I realized these are the elitists. These are the folks that were hanging out with the Natrona County Republican Party, the people who, use Robert's Rules of Order as a bludgeon, as a giant club. So Alyssa Campbell really does know. But did you hear the crosstalk? When there was a point of order, she tried to shout down Representative Rachel Rodriguez Williams. I'm getting there. Well, Alyssa Campbell, Representative Campbell, that's not how things work on the floor of the House. When there is a point of order called, it means you stop talking. You stop your patronizing elitist tone and you don't say another word. But that's not how Alyssa Campbell thinks that things work. In fact, you heard it. In fact, let me rewind it and we'll listen to it again.
Point of order.
Getting there.
What's
Thank
your
you.
point?
The point
Mr.
is,
Speaker, we are on the amendment.
we are on the
We're
amendment.
not, Mr. Chairman, pardon me. I don't believe that crosstalk is permitted. You granted me the mic.
Point of order, please. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are on the amendment, not here to listen to dinner invitations or fear of firearms. If we can stick to the amendment and the line numbers, that would be great.
Point taken. Let's bring it into the bill, please.
Yes. And apologies for the cross. That was my bad.
There's really no apology there. All of that was intentional because we've seen it before on the floor of the House of Representatives, but it is the elitism that oozes out of these newly elected representatives. I mean, they've been elitists in their professional career, so why wouldn't that translate to the House floor? But you heard it in the crosstalk, and like I said, originally when I heard this, I was going to write it off as not knowing how the floor of the House works, but I don't think so. Nope, this has happened more than a couple times on the floor of the House of Representatives. And so we're just going to chalk it up to Alyssa Campbell's attitude. And you can hear it. Listen to this next piece. This is great. And again, we're still talking about House Bill 172. I have to tell you, I was worried when our pal Bill Henderson.
Oh, I think you got to stop and take a look at what you're doing here. I speak against this because it kind of reminds me of that fairy tale, Cinderella.
I was worried when my pal Bill Henderson exited the House of Representatives, thinking that I wouldn't have any more fantastic sound bites. But I was sadly mistaken that there are a couple of people on the House floor that are going to provide me with endless amounts of entertainment. Take, for example, this one.
So my point of the amendment is this bill is not a Second Amendment bill.
No.
This bill denies local authority. And that's the challenge I have with it. Because what this bill does is dictate that the state government can tell our cities, our counties, our school districts
Yeah, they can. Mm-hmm.
what they can and cannot do on their property and in their buildings.
It's not their property.
That's where I have a challenge because we are denying their right to decide in their home.
Wow. That towns and cities and counties can regulate the Second Amendment. This is if nothing else shows her ignorance of our laws, it's this one right here, that towns and cities and counties can regulate the Second Amendment and tell you where and when you can carry your firearm. The Wyoming legislature did away with that officially a couple of years ago through our preemption amendment. And really, before then, there was just an error made when the original law was passed that it actually kind of allowed that to happen. Now, historically, Wyoming towns had a lot of different ordinances that said, you can't take your guns in town. You remember the movie Unforgiven? Right in the opening part of the movie, there's the sign that says no firearms allowed in Big Whiskey. Well, that was pretty common. in most Wyoming towns. In fact, there was an 1876 statute in Buffalo, Wyoming, that prevented firearms in town. And that statute stayed on the books all the way through the 80s. And in fact, I mean, it was never really enforced because Wyoming passed constitutional carry. And most Wyoming towns thought, oh, well, it's constitutional carry and there's nothing we can do about it, which is absolutely true. But there was an error in the bill, and that was fixed a couple of years ago. The truth is that cities and counties and school boards and towns and any other, and this is maybe a term that Alyssa Campbell should probably learn, any other political subdivision a subdivision of the state can't regulate firearms. I mean, it's very clear that Alyssa Campbell doesn't have any idea what she's talking about. But there's more to come on her, and I can't wait for it to come to to show up on the House floor. She's going to be an endless source of patronizing sound bites. Well, speaking of patronizing representatives, I didn't want to leave out Representative J.D. Williams. Oh, I've missed this guy. Oh, it is incredible. When he speaks on the House floor, he can barely get a sentence out of his mouth. But when he's on his own Facebook page, well, he's certainly authoritative. And he sounds like he is in complete control. Take a listen to this bullcrap.
And surprise, surprise, since the legislature is now in session, it is time to stand together and push back again. For the past 135 years, the governor has appointed the attorney general, and the Senate confirms the governor's appointment. House Bill 102 proposes to end this practice and start electing our attorney general. Currently, the AG serves as the chief law enforcement officer and chief legal counsel for the state, ensuring that the law is upheld without personal or political agenda.
Okay.
If we cheapen the AG's office by putting a politician behind the desk, we will enable the AG to ignore directives from the governor, leading to conflicts of interest and decisions driven by political motivations.
I can't handle this guy anymore. Okay, first of all, Wyoming does have an appointed attorney general, but it is a political office because the attorney general serves at the pleasure of the governor. So whomever the governor is, and right now we have lefty Go Green Gordon as the governor, his appointed attorney general is Bridget Hill. And there has been no other less effective, how do I even want to put this? No other attorney general that refuses to stand up for Wyoming citizens. There are so many cases that are sitting on Bridget Hill's desk that she refuses to prosecute, some that are clear violations of our election code, clear crimes that are sitting on Bridget Hill's desk. There's a number of election fraud cases, a whole bunch of them, sitting on her desk right now that she won't prosecute. And let me give you a great example of one that is a direct result of Bridget Hill's problems. There was an article in the Cowboy last week about Randy Kane, who he was in prison for a felony, got out, and he got one of the governor's certificates that says that he can have his firearms rights back. Well, first of all, as I told you when that bill came up a year and a half ago, that it wasn't going to work, that the state cannot preempt federal firearm statutes, unfortunately. We should push back with everything that we possibly could. We should try to nullify that law. But as yet, it hadn't been. Well, anyway, Randy Kane's house was raided by the ATF in the DCI, the Wyoming Division of Criminal Investigation. They assisted in that. They seized his firearms. They put him and his girlfriend in cuffs for several hours in the back of a police car. He still doesn't have his guns back. Now, the only reason he had those guns is he was told by the Department of Corrections and the state of Wyoming and Bridget Hill's office that he could have them. And when it was brought to the attention of Bridget Hill, she didn't do anything with it. It sat on her desk. And to this date, Bridget Hill has not done anything to help out Randy Kane. He still doesn't have his firearms back. But do you think that she could be bothered to lift a finger? Nope. Not at all. Now, the problem here is that we do have an appointed attorney general. Most other states have an elected attorney general. And while I have some reservations, on either side of this, I think the most important thing in any public official is that they have accountability. One of the biggest problems that Trump is fixing right now is that we have an endless line of bureaucrats in our government that are not accountable to anyone. They don't have to answer to voters. They don't have to answer to anybody. They can just act. And there's really nothing that can be done with them. That is the case with Bridget Hill. Wyoming's attorney general. Now, J.D. Williams says, well, putting an elected attorney general in there, that would put a politician in office. What do you think you have right now? You have an attorney that serves at the pleasure of the governor. The governor is a politician, so of course the attorney general is going to prosecute. And I don't mean that was totally the wrong word because she doesn't really prosecute anything. But she's going to push the governor's agenda. She's going to defend the governor's whatever he wants. She is not going to serve the interests of the people, which Bridget Hill has been a perfect example of how an appointed attorney general really, really, really is bad for our republic. But let's listen to a little bit more of what Dum Dum has to say.
Than the rule of law. This will diminish the quality of legal representation for the state and grow government. Presently, our AG actually works. Elected AGs oversee a bureaucracy of attorneys that do their work. In addition, there is a reason that in states where AG is elected, AG stands for aspiring governor. We are used to this kind of ridiculousness coming from the left fringe. But today in Wyoming, this is being proposed by us, the Republican majority. Wyoming House of Representatives, please take a step back and look in the mirror. Does our hypocrisy know any bounds?
Does your hypocrisy know any bounds, J.D. Williams? The truth is that J.D. Williams has been siding with the left and with the redcoats since his first time in office, since he was appointed. J.D. Williams is not a conservative, though if you listen to the videos on his Facebook page, he certainly makes it seem like he is, but he couldn't be further from that. And the truth is that Wyoming does need an elected attorney general. And like I told you, I've gone back and forth on this one a couple of times, but I think that we have to err on the side of accountability. Right now, we don't have an attorney general that's accountable to anybody. We have an attorney general that won't prosecute any election-related offense. There are crimes that were committed by public officials that just sit on her desk. She hasn't done anything to lift a finger for Randy Kane, who had his house ransacked by the ATF. Bridget Hill is nothing more than a political puppet of Governor Mark Gordon. I think that the only way to fix this is that we have to have an elected attorney general. And like I said, if you want to know the difference between J.D. Williams, how he appears on his Facebook page versus how he appears on the House floor, just listen to any of the floor debate in which he's participated. In fact, I think for tomorrow's episode, I'll try to get a couple of sound bites from J.D. Williams so we can make a comparison. But the truth is, he's just another redcoat that is going to push the agenda of the left like they always do. Well, we've only got about 12 minutes left in the program. Let's go ahead and take another break, and when we come back, we'll go ahead and finish up. I want to get to some more national news. There's a couple of pieces that I found. One with Shifty Adam Schiff. He's back at it. Yeah, he never took a step back. Doesn't really care about lying about President Trump. Didn't stop him before. In fact, he got him elected to a higher office, so why not continue? More after the break. Christmas is over, and all of the fun holiday cheer has been had. And what are we all left with? Frigid Wyoming weather. Below freezing temperatures that you still have to go out in. That's right, you do have to go back to work at one point or another. And not to scare you, but think about this. Every single morning, you get to scrape the ice off of your windshield. Now, while I can't do anything with that, I can make sure that your feet stay nice and toasty warm while you're doing it. All you have to do is order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. And to get you a pair of them, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. The program is only going to continue to expand. Make sure that you stay abreast of everything that happens on the podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And, of course, Cowboy State Politics Live now every Tuesday through Friday. I'm done with my gallivanting around, at least for this session anyway. So make sure that you stay tuned to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday right here, 8 a.m. on YouTube, Facebook, X, Twitter. No, that is X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. And, of course, you can get it, listen to the podcast everywhere that you get your podcasts. Now, before the break, we were talking about J.D. Williams and his problems with having an elected attorney general. And part of the biggest reason why he doesn't want that is he knows that the way Wyoming's going right now, that we're electing more conservative individuals to political offices, that it's very likely that a conservative would be elected as attorney general. And that is one thing that the redcoats definitely can't abide. There's no way that they want a conservative in another high elected office in this state, because all of the people that weren't getting prosecuted before would get prosecuted, like all of the election fraud that's happened. And regardless of what Gail Simmons and Tom Lubnow and Bruce Burns have to say about it, there are election irregularities in Wyoming. There are instances of voter fraud, and Bridget Hill has done nothing to stop them. And so Wyoming needs an attorney general that is accountable. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that that's going to be a perfect system. What I am saying, though, is that I think that we should err on the side of accountability. If you elect someone, and no different than a governor or a House representative or a senator or a mayor or a county commissioner, if you don't like what they do while they're in office, then we get rid of them. That's why we have an electoral system, and it's why we have accountability. And it's it's one of those things that I think that if we're going to make an error, we should err on that side. By the way, over the break, I looked up how many days it's been since Landon Brown agreed to an interview on Cowboy State Politics and then didn't show up. 1,464 days. That's right, my friends. After numerous attempts to get Landon Brown to come on Cowboy State Politics, he still is refusing. And probably one of the reasons why he's doing that is because he says dumb stuff like this.
Chairman Brown. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, just a little over a week ago, we put our hand up. We swore an oath to the Constitution, not only of this state, but the United States. Article 4, Section 1 of the United States Constitution says this bill is blatantly unconstitutional.
Oh, yeah, and I should tell you, he's talking about the bill that Wyoming wouldn't recognize out-of-state driver's licenses that were issued to illegal aliens. That's the bill he's saying is completely unconstitutional. Let's continue.
Blatantly. Let me read that to you.
Blatantly.
Full faith and credit shall be given to each state to the public acts, bills, laws, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state.
Oh, okay.
Congress may,
I get
by
it.
general laws, prescribe the manner in which other such acts, records, and proceedings shall be proved and effect thereof.
No, yeah. So that's why it's unconstitutional, because just because another state passes a law, makes something legal, then every state has to abide by that. Well, maybe we should take a look at the bill we started out the program with, that we're going to get rid of gun-free zones, that Wyoming has a constitutional carry, and now we're going to extend that to schools and other public buildings. Well, there are other states that don't have constitutional carry. There are other states that have extraordinarily restrictive gun control laws, like Illinois. Well, just because Wyoming issues a concealed carry permit, which, by the way, in Wyoming, you don't necessarily have to have that to carry your firearm. But anyway, let's say you have a concealed carry permit and you try to go to Illinois. Illinois is not going to recognize your concealed carry permit because it comes from Wyoming, and Illinois doesn't have reciprocity with Wyoming. Or we could talk about our neighbor to the south, where they've legalized recreational use of marijuana. Just because Colorado legalized it, that doesn't mean it's legal in Wyoming. It doesn't mean that you can go to Colorado, buy a whole bag of weed, drive it up through Wyoming, and smoke it out on your front stoop. That doesn't mean that at all. It's still illegal in the state of Wyoming. Landon Brown is making a ridiculous argument, and it further exposes his ignorance of what the Constitution says and what the Constitution means. But that really shouldn't surprise any of us, because all of these redcoats, and if you ever need a copy of the Constitution, just go ask one of them. They'll pull one out of their back pocket that is bright and shiny new, and the reason for it is that they've never opened it, which is clear in Landon Brown's case, that he's clearly never read the whole thing, because if he did, he would recognize that all of the powers not specifically granted in the Constitution to the federal government are left up to these states. The states are the laboratories of democracy, and laws differ from one state to another one. Remember when Montana passed the no speed limit sign, or the no speed limit law? Yeah, you could cross the border right up by the one that's right by the Cowboy State Politics Northern Command. And you could drive 90 miles an hour down the interstate if you wanted to. But that doesn't mean that you could drive 90 miles an hour down the interstate when you cross the Wyoming line. Wyoming's laws differed from Montana's, same way that they differ from Illinois and they differ from Colorado. Landon Brown just really doesn't understand what's happening here. There's no reason why we couldn't pass a law that banned illegal aliens from driving in this state. Now, I question how your state trooper or your local policeman is going to figure that out. The bill actually puts a marker on the ID card that says non-U.S. citizen. But then there's another question. We issue driver's licenses to all sorts of people who aren't necessarily citizens. Maybe you're in town on business and you've rented a car. There's lots of times where I'm driving around and I see a foreign license plate on a car. So I think that there's some mechanics that need to be worked out in the bill, but there's absolutely no reason why Wyoming couldn't ban foreign citizens, people who are not U.S. citizens, from driving in the state of Wyoming. There's nothing that prevents it in the Constitution. And I think that it's one more measure that we should pass to get a handle on illegal immigration. If the last 4 years didn't prove anything to us, it proved that every state is a border state. Now, we have documented proof that the Biden administration was flying in immigrants everywhere across the country. There's no doubt that some of those immigrants, and they're illegal aliens, they're not immigrants. I mean, see, I fall victim to the rhetoric of the news media too, but they're illegal aliens, and we should continue to refer to them as such. But there's been reports all over the state of Wyoming, and I think that every state is a border state, and every state needs to enact laws that prevent illegal aliens from accessing our government, from accessing the privileges or the programs that we have for Wyoming and United States citizens. Well, we've only got about 2 minutes left in the program. Like I said, there's been a lot that we've like cruised by in today's program. Gun control, we haven't heard the rest of that. There's a lot of one of the bills, and I want to talk about this one a little bit tomorrow on the program. But the one that prevented the federal government from buying land in the state of Wyoming, I've been struggling with that one. I'm going to cover that one in more detail on tomorrow's program because I think it's a conversation worth having. There are a lot of bills that have already come up in this legislative session that deal directly with your individual rights. Well, actually, any law deals with your individual rights, but the biggies, private property rights, the right to the right to be a U.S. citizen if you were born here. I mean, there's a lot of different things that have come up. Gun control, and so there are some big bills that are happening in the Wyoming legislature. And one of those I want to talk about tomorrow is private property rights. I'll try to get our pal Mark Jennings to sit down with me for a few minutes and go through it. But I really have a problem with telling somebody what they can do with their own personal property just because it happens to be the federal government that wants to buy it. That's House Bill 118. It passed third reading, I believe it was yesterday in the House of Representatives. But anyway, it's still got to go to the Senate, and I think it's a conversation that we need to have. So we're gonna go ahead and cover that. But we've gone through another busy broadcast hour on Cowboy State Politics Live. It's good to be back, my friends. Every time I'm away from this microphone, I miss you more than you could possibly know. So anyway, that'll do it for today's installment of the program. Have a good day, and we'll talk tomorrow, 8 a.m. Cowboy State Politics Live. See you tomorrow.